throughout the history of art, the figure drawings, figure paintings have been the basis of art. And there have been many methods throughout the years, but basically the old masters had their own particular methods, which will be close to what we'll be doing tonight. Frank Riley believed very strongly in the methods and techniques of the old masters, and he had his own thinking and philosophy of it, who, and Cesare will be discussing that tonight. You see some of the drawings that he has brought, some on that side of the room, and some over there. I think we'll be showing a few more. But this is basically a technique that I personally feel as the best I've seen around on how to draw the figure. I know in all the books of Simon Nicolaides and everybody on contour drawing and gesture drawing and all the different methods. This one, when fully developed and understood, really does a beautiful figure, understanding how one mask goes into another. I remember the first time I went to a figure painting class, and there's nothing that replaces putting the time in and doing a lot of drawing of the figure. And I went to the Art Students League when I was a bit younger, and I went to my first figure drawing class, and high expectations, and of course I'm waiting, have all my pencils and paper ready, and here walks in a woman who looked older than my grandmother. And she took off her robe. It wasn't what I expected. But it got better throughout the years. Okay? So without further explanation of his method, I know you'll enjoy Cesare Borgia.
Good evening. My name is Cesare Borgia. My brother's name is Alexander Borgia, and his daughter's name is Lucretia Borgia. The only one who's missing is Valentino Borgia, the good guy. But the bad ones, Cesare Borgia, Lucretia, and Alexander, they're here. Now, this is a subject that I can discuss ad nauseum for hours. You know, I'm going to try to cover the universe in a short length of time. And that's a tough job. But I'm going to try. And we'll have a question and answer period after. So you can ask questions, I will give demonstration, I will show you some pictures, etc., etc. Now, I don't represent any particular school. I think there's room for everybody. Impressionist, avant-garde, whatever. I want the privilege to be able to say whether I like it or not, but there's room for everybody. Now, there is only one correct way to paint and draw, and that is your way. There is no guru outside of yourself. You're an individual personality, you have special ideals, ideas, you have feelings, and these must not be curtailed. So there is one correct way to draw and paint, your way, and nobody else's. However, that doesn't mean that you can do it right away. There is a body of knowledge that you must learn. There is. And I don't believe in rules. I believe in principles. You can follow all the rules in the book and come out with a crummy painting, and break all the rules and come out with a masterpiece. Right? But I do believe in principle. And there is, thank God, a body of knowledge. Now, anybody who tells you to go outside and paint what you see, he's crazy. Doesn't know what he's talking about. Listen, paint what you see. If I take a piece of white paint and put it against the sun, it's black. How in God's name can you paint what you see? A piece of white paint against this light is black. So you have to work within a certain formula, a certain convention. And Raleigh had this: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is white paint, and 0 is black. The absence of light. That's your highest value. You can't duplicate that lamp. You can't duplicate sunlight. Did you ever see a black automobile with the sun shining on it? You have specular light. We have a beam of white light. You can't even imitate that. But you can give the illusion of light and shade, of sunlight, moonlight. You can give that illusion. You can. But it's an illusion, and you have to work within a certain convention. And that's where the body of knowledge comes in. I'm a little angry at some of the teaching methods. You walk in the class, do your thing, express yourself. Express yourself. Guy knows from nothing. Express yourself. Brain surgery, self-taught. You do need certain principles in the beginning. You need them. And most of the schools don't have it. I teach in White Plains. And most of my students have a degree. Who has a master's, who has a doctor's, who has this, and have to start them from the scratch to learn how to paint and draw after spending thousands of dollars going to college, going to Europe. They can't draw, they can't earn a living. If you can't earn a living out of your painting, forget it. There's something wrong. Yes, you can earn a living if somebody wants a portrait, you can do it. Somebody wants a landscape, you can do it. Somebody wants an illustration, you can do it too. Somebody wants a mural, you can do it. Somebody wants a seascape, you can do it. Then you can earn a living. People say, I specialize in this, I specialize in that. They don't know how to paint and draw. If you're studying medicine and you want to specialize in heart surgery, you become a doctor first. And then you specialize in heart surgery. You specialize after becoming a doctor. And the first thing you have to do is to learn how to paint and draw first. Versailles was a great anatomist, Versailles. A great anatomist. He knew every muscle in the body. He couldn't draw. He had to hire Titian and his students to do the illustrations. His students didn't know a damn thing about anatomy. They didn't know the difference between the clavicle and the little finger. But they were able to draw. And those illustrations were done by Titian and his students, and not by Versailles, the great anatomist. So knowing anatomy is important, but studying anatomy first is putting the cart before the horse. There's a time to study anatomy. And there are certain principles of drawing. Now, Riley never claimed to have anything new. He said, I've compiled the findings of the masters, and I'm able to articulate them and explain them to you. He said, I have no innovations. It's all been done. And that's what I will cover tonight. And before I do go into that, another beef I want to get off my chest. Every time I go to a show, different kinds of show, what do I see? The same cute puppy dogs, still lifes. There's nothing wrong with that. You can paint a magnificent still life, which will add dimensions. Nothing wrong with that. But occasionally, give us something a little more profound. Beethoven wrote a lot of little songs, but then he gave us a symphony once in a while. Shakespeare wrote sonnets, but then he wrote a big, magnificent play. There's a great deal to paint, not only puppy dogs and fences, as good as they are. What about the meaning of life? What about social comments? There are religious pictures you can do, social something significant, the brotherhood of man. And as Plato said, the noble passions. What are the noble passions? Does anybody know? The pursuit of the true, the good, and the beautiful. The pursuit of the true, the good, and the beautiful. Why not paint something like that? I know, it's easy to sell small pictures. And I don't blame you for doing small pictures. It's easy to sell. Big pictures are expensive and they don't fit the roof. It's easy to sell. But after you've made a few bucks with that and you have a little time, paint something significant. Something that grabs me. Something that elevates me. Look at the old masters. They painted everything. But they also painted significant pictures. Social comment, religious comment. What you feel. Don't you have a credo? You have a credo. You know what you feel, what you want. Do it. And this beats me. It's a big beat. I see the same thing, it becomes redundant. The same puppy dogs, the same fences, the same trees. Something significant once in a while. And if you don't do that, you're living in sin. You have a universal language. God has given you a gift, a technique. And if you're not a practitioner, you're living in sin if you don't paint. I ask my students, what is the meaning of life, honey? You know what the answer is? To draw and paint. Great. That's the meaning of life for you. The most charismatic individuals that I've met, the individuals that everybody loves and adores and chases, have been people who've been fanatic about something, whether it's music, golf, tennis, whatever it is. Get Matrita Navratilova, Bernstein, Einstein, people who've been fanatic about a particular thing, and everybody follows them. Why? Because they're grounded. They've got their feet on the ground. They're not lukewarm. If you don't have a mission in life, find it. Assume it. And if you're a painter, you express it in your painting. Otherwise, you're still living in sin. And if you don't follow the bent that God gave you, you'll go through hell, yes. You'll be the recipient of inconceivable and unspeakable agonies. Because you're frustrating your inner self. You're frustrated. And if that's not enough, the abyss. All right. I got that off my chest. There's one guy, he does still life, and they're very good. He has a bottle and a bunch of grapes. Then in the next picture, he's got the bottle and the grapes are behind. In the next picture, he's got the same bottle and the grapes are on top. Well, for God's sakes, give me a break. How redundant can you get? All right. Now here's some other principles. One big principle is this, that painting and drawing is purely psychological. Think about that. Before you breathe, think about that. Drawing and painting is purely psychological. Mm-hmm. You're giving an illusion. And you have to know the tricks of that illusion. You have to know the vocabulary of that illusion. Degas said, you know, to make a good painting and a good drawing, you got to be a liar, a cheat, and a con man. He's right. You're creating an illusion. You can't copy what you see. Well, what you see is a point of departure. Then you have to be creative about it. Utilize that knowledge. What's wrong with most of the work? Too damn photographic. Why do what the camera can do? You've got to go beyond the camera. And besides, the camera's got one eye. You've got two eyes. You see differently. What they're giving you is camera vision, not human vision. There's a difference between human vision and camera vision. A tremendous difference. I'll give you an example. Look at my nose. Can you see my hands? No. If you look at my nose, can you see my feet? No. That's camera vision. Camera vision sees everything. The human vision sees only certain things. You look at a painting from Vermeer, one eye is outstanding, the other eye is a little subdued, the nose is a little subdued, the lips. All right. Now, before we go there, I'm going to go into something which should be helpful. Now, many people do portraits, and their head looks flat. It doesn't look solid. There is something missing. There's a way, there's a prescribed way to make the head look solid. There is. And you have to know it. If you don't know it, you're stuck. Let me give you an example. This is what? A top plane, right? A front plane and an under plane. All right? Now follow me closely.
How would you define plane?
Does anybody give me a definition of a plane? Come on. Don't be afraid. It's a free country. You can talk. What is a plane? Pinpoint it.
The direction a surface faces.
Not quite on the head. All right, I'll give it to you. Here's a form. A round form. I take a knife and I slice part of that form. And I have a plane. I take a knife, I slice part of that form. I have another plane. A plane is the flat side of a form. You can't have a plane unless you have a form first. A plane is the flat side of a form. And you can't have planes unless you have the form first. This is the form, and I slice part of that form, and I get a plane. These are planes. Now follow me carefully on this. Let's say that hypothetically, this is 8, 7, and 6. Hypothetically. All right. 8, 7, and 6.
What is that word you used?
Hypothetically.
Oh.
Yeah.
You see? So I think it's better we go on the other side. I think it's better we get what he's doing in this place.
8, 7, and 6. Now follow me carefully. You can disagree with me if you want to. Raise your hand. It's a free country. You can talk back. I like challenge. All this is light. This is a middle light, this is a dark light, and that is shadow. Most people, when they paint a portrait, confuse this with this, and this with that, and this with that. So, you have a flat-looking painting with no planes. Now, if you have, now follow me closely, if you have only one source of light, only one source of light, as I get away from this light, there will be a diminution of light. No? Right? There has to be, not because I say so, not because Mr. Riley says so, but because it's reality, a fact of nature. All right. Again, hypothetically, this is the strongest light. That's called the effect. The strongest light is called the effect. Your next strong light and your next light. Now, let's say that I want to put a highlight over here. I would go 8.5. Put a highlight over here, I might go 7.75. Put a light over here, 6.5 maybe. But what do you see in most of the portraits in our galleries? You see a light down here just as strong as that. And you see white over here. When you can have white, if I have one source of light, if that's the strongest source of light, this cannot be duplicated down here. The same as this. I can't put a highlight here as strong as the highlight over here. Ridiculous. Of course, the face looks flat. Natural. I'll give you an example of a painting with an effect. This is incomplete because it has a, it's incomplete. This is a wash, that's an underpainting. I didn't do it. I didn't do the face. It's incomplete, it's a demonstration painting. All right, this is the effect. The lightest part. 876. As I get away from the light, it has to get dark. Look, put it upside down, you can see what the effect is. All right, and I have news for you. That looks very light, doesn't it? I'm far from white. I'm far from white. People put white paint over here, white paint over here, white paint over here. You can't, it's impossible. If this is the strongest light, that's it. If this is president, this is vice president, secretary of state. If everybody is president, nobody is president. If everybody is president, if I put equal lights all over, then nobody is president. You have no subject and predicate. You have to have a subject and a predicate. Subject and a predicate. If you have one source of light. What's wrong with modern photography? You have lights all over the place and it kills the form. That's why Rembrandt lighting is so beautiful. And one source of light is so beautiful for that reason. Because you have a hierarchy. You have a president. Not everybody is president. It reminds me of some of the schools that painting is nothing but color. Every painting looks the same. What about the different moods? The shades of gray. No, everything is color. If everything is color, there's no color. If everybody is president, nobody is president. There has to be a focus. No matter how I turn this, you know what the effect is. You know what the highest light is. You know what the subject is. And if you're painting a portrait and you don't have this, it's going to look flat. And it's going to look photographed. This is not Riley's idea, mine idea. No, no, no. Reality. If you want me to go into epistemology, teleology, eschatology, I can. To back my viewpoint. All right. Another principle of Riley. Another principle of Riley. The whole is greater than the parts. See? Most people, when they paint, you see the belly button, but you don't see the figure. The whole is greater than the parts. And Riley had an instructive method of inculcating this. As an analogy, does the equator exist? Anybody? Does the equator exist? What? Conceptual. Do lines of latitude and longitude exist? Right? Yet we can't do without the lines of latitude and longitude. We can't travel. Creation of the mind. As I said before, that's why all drawing and painting is purely psychological. And you'll agree with me when I'm through. Or else, my name is Cesare Borgia. All right. Riley came out with a set of ideas called the 6 lines. I never counted them. I don't know if there are 6 lines. Riley came out with an idea, a suggestion, a teaching aid. And his premise was this, that the whole is greater than the parts, and that there are certain imaginary lines, like the equator, which exist. And he had us think of this. There's the head, shoulders. There's an imaginary line, like the equator, running through the center of the body, which is called the line of action. The crotch is the center of the body, whereas this is equal to that. Now, of course, people with long legs, people with short legs, but generally speaking, the crotch is the center of the body. There's also another imaginary line, conceptual. It doesn't exist. It's conceptual, just like the equator. There's a relationship from the shoulders to the crotch.
When you said from the crotch to there, you're talking about the shoulders of the...
And then from the neck to the hips. Now, this is not a formula. Rather, I want you to find your own lines, with one exception. The figure does not work in a fragmented manner. What happens over here is related to this. What happened to this is related to this. The figure does not work in a fragmented manner. When you draw the figure, you have to think of the whole first. Get the action first. This is action. It's nothing to do with anatomy. Get the action. And then superimpose the anatomy. Okay. Let's get this a little further. Let's say I'm drawing an arm. What do? I get the action of the arm first. And then I superimpose the anatomy. So, I draw the arm. Instead of doing it this way, you come out with a constipated looking line. Most people, they draw the eyeball. By the time they get down here, they're out of drawing because it's not based on idea, an analogy. Suppose I'm making a design with a bunch of beads. Isn't it more sensible, more sane to do this and then put the beads over here? Is it more sensible to get the action of the arm and then place your anatomy as an embellishment on the arm? Is it more sensible? The whole is better than the parts. Instead of just starting with a small part like this and come out, you know, and doing it over again, so forth like that. Is it more sensible? I'll repeat this again. The head. Line of action. Shoulders to the crotch. And neck to the hips. Now this is easy in the front pose. But suppose mother's doing this, or mother's doing that. You have to find your own lines. As long as you give me an idea, a complete idea. Each pose has one particular idea. All right, let's carry this further. Let's say hypothetically, that the line of action is doing that. Now, if this is my premise, my line of action, then every line that I put down has to be in sympathy with that premise. It would seem to me. In a few seconds, you have the figure down, and then you can put your embellishments. Then put the anatomy on that. Instead of starting from the top with a constipated line, feeling your way through, and you've lost the whole elan, the whole swing of the figure you've lost. What are you going to do if you go to the ballet, the football game, the tennis game, and you see a beautiful motion? You can't tell the performer to stop and hold while you eyeball. You've got to have something like this to remember the action. Then take it home and finish it. I was drawing from the model in one of Roddy's classes, and Roddy came over. He tapped me on the shoulder. I was looking at the model. Said, go out in the hall and finish it. You take one look, and you go out in the hall and finish it. And this system that Roddy had would train you at a glance to capture the action. So that every part would fit in. After you can put details after, and finish the figure. The whole is greater than the parts. I have news for you. You try to draw your cat, he ain't going to pose for you. The leopard at the zoo is not going to stand for you. You do courtroom reporting. The judge is not going to look at you. The lawyers are not going to stand over there, and the jury is not going to pose for you. You have to draw them. And you need a shorthand to see the whole, before the belly button, see the whole figure. And that's the whole premise of Roddy's teaching. That the whole is greater than the parts. And some people think it's a gimmick. It's not a gimmick. You can find your own lines. I can show you some. This is based on that too, on some of those principles. This is called the big action. And this is called the small action. You want to reduce that? Symbolically, the big action, the small action. If you miss this and this, you've missed the whole damn thing. Another thing, the camera sees everything hard-edged because there's only one eye. If you look carefully, you will find that this edge is very soft, very blurred, and this edge very hard. There's a variety of edge work over here. It's not cut out. And that's what gives atmosphere to a painting, the edge work. Hard edges project, soft edges recede. The camera doesn't do that. I have news for you. This edge was not like this on the model. It was not like that. It was a hard edge. But I had to give the illusion of the edge receding, so I softened it. That's why you don't copy the model. Use creative thinking. A photograph will make every edge hard. There's a differentiation of edge over here. Hard edge, soft, 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 hard, soft, hard. A variety. And that has to be manipulated by you. You don't copy the model, you interpret the model. And this you have to have knowledge. You have to know when to put a soft edge, when to put a hard edge. This done with very simple colors. The only thing that's different is the edge plane is grayed. It's a natural skin. It's not jazzed up with all kinds of greens and complementary colors, you know, and it looks commercial when you do that. It becomes a mannerism, becomes a cliche. People say, warm lights, cool shadows. No, not necessarily so. Sometimes, yes. You look at Rubens, the shadows are warm. The reflected light is very hot. It varies depending on the mood. There are no rules, observation, and knowledge. The edge here, there's a complete blur, completely soft edge. Hard edges over here. The breast look round and they look solid. Why? Because of the edge work. Not because I copied the model, because I interpreted the model. A camera will not do that. And that's why most of the paintings that you see look flat as hell. Unless you understand your edge work. I can talk for 2 hours on edges. I can talk. Now, depending on the view. Now this here, that's the premise. And every line I put down has to be in sympathy with that premise. Each pose is one idea. And you have to have a subject and a predicate. Now, this is a front view. In profile, profile. You can find your own lines of relationship. This is not a formula. But remember that when you put down a line, that line has to express the whole first. The whole first. And then after you get the action, then you put on your anatomy on the action. This is easier said than done. It's not easy to do. And my students have a great deal of trouble because they're accustomed to eyeballing. No. No. They've looked at the belly button, not at the whole thing. And that was Riley's premise and these lines. I have drawings over there which demonstrate these principles. You can look at them. I'll bring some of them up. I have some drawings which demonstrate. I'll discuss them later. Any questions on this so far? Yes, it takes practice to do this. Yes, it does. You're going to get disgusted with it. Some of my students come and they curse me. And then at the end of a couple of years, they bless me. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way to draw. Don't get me wrong. I used to know a chap who used to do a portrait by starting with the eye first. Started with an eye. And then he built around it until he got the whole head. That was very good. But he had this principle in mind. Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, never heard of the 6 lines from Raleigh, no. But they knew the principle. Look at an arm like that and you see what the action is. The anatomy is placed on a given action. Sergeant knew it was brushwork. Did anybody see the Sergeant show? It was marked morning, noon, and night. Morning, noon, and night. And one girl at the desk said, my God, this museum is always empty, always empty. And we're jammed full. Said, who's this guy, Sergeant? Where does he live? I said, honey, what's good is never old-fashioned. What's good is never old-fashioned. Don't feel that you've got to be avant-garde, that you've got to be contemporary. You have to be yourself. You have a credo, you have ideas, you have inspirations. Express those, because then I learn from you. I don't want my students to learn it, to paint like me or anybody else. I want them to paint like themselves. A person will look at the model and see mass. Somebody else will see a lyrical line, a poetic line. That's yours. And I learn from you. I tell my students to learn from you. And also I tell my students, don't believe everything I tell you. Check me out. I tell my students that all the time. Don't believe everything I tell you. Check me out. If I'm wrong, tell me. And I'll be delighted. Now, without understanding this, that the action comes first, without understanding that the action comes first, people study anatomy prematurely. So what happens? There are a lot of anatomy books. I'm not going to mention names. There are a lot of beautiful anatomy books, and they're good. But for God's sake, some of these guys, every man and woman looks like Tarzan. A delicate Botticelli type figure comes out looking like Tarzan. That's for the copy for the horse. Get the action first. Get the. I'll show you some of those. I think I'll show them right now. These are drawings I did in Bradley's class. This is an older woman. The flesh is kind of flabby. I had to show that. I couldn't make her look like Tarzan. Here's another girl. She's much younger. She's strong. Her planes are prominent. I had to use a different technique from the one I used to draw that one. This man was sinewy. And you can see the lines of action that I have over here. And then I put the anatomy on top of that. The lines of action are underneath. If you look, these drawings will be here, you can look at. And you will find that here, there is no edge. Practically soft. Look, there's no edge over here. Why? Because this comes ahead. There's some other drawings I can show you. That's the same pencil, and yet the drawings look different. With the same pencil. There's no edge here. So it goes around. That's calligraphy. Soft edge, hard edge, soft edge. There's a variety of edge work. The important thing is to get the character of the model. Not to make the model look like Tarzan or anybody else. There's some drawings in drapery. They'll be here for you to examine. And notice, here there is one line. Only. Now, another thing about lines. Raleigh used to say, a line has to come from somewhere and go somewhere. Watch. Which lines have more action, these or these? The bottom one, right? Because they're going somewhere. There's a sense of direction. A line like this stops. It's flat. Not going anywhere. A line has to come from somewhere and go somewhere. Beginning, middle, and an end. 8, 7, 6. Look. 8, 7, 6. From dark to light. A line can be very expressive. Just by the use of calligraphy. By the use of calligraphy. Now look. That doesn't mean anything. Light and shade. By the use of calligraphy, you can give an illusion of light and shade. This is an underplane. The underplane is always darker than the top plane. So, if this is an underplane, it's got to be darker than this. This has to be darker than that. That's calligraphy. And that could be used in brushwork. Cesare used it. Another important thing, accents. There's so much to cover that it isn't funny. I can talk for weeks. Accents. These lines are redundant. Watch this. These lines are more like. Rubens used to do that. Used to put a strong line on one side of the leg, another strong line at the other side of the leg, and another strong line at the other side of the leg, and he got movement. A line like this is redundant. You're telling me the same thing is happening here and here, no matter how accurately. This line is redundant. It's a diagram. Mechanical drawing. Calligraphy. The depth and weight of the line. That's very, very, very critical. I want some questions before I go on. Somebody has any questions?
Just when you have the side view or the back view, could you do those steps a little slower?
Yes.
Explain them.
Another thing I want to explain. Here's a rib cage. is the clavicle. There's a hole in the rib cage. Anatomical fact. Anatomical fact. The neck originates from that hole. And if you do that right, you get the shoulders for nothing. Many times I see a drawing where the head doesn't belong in the body. That's because, why? Why is that so? Because the back of the rib cage is higher than the front. In profile, you get this. The back is always higher than the front. That's because of the rib cage. Another thing that's wrong with the teaching, demonstrations. You don't learn a damn thing from demonstrations. I've seen people go to demonstrations for years. This guy, that guy, that guy, this guy for color, this guy for anatomy, this guy for this. Still don't draw and paint any better. You don't know what the guy is thinking. But Riley said, if I give you knowledge, then you'll understand when you see a demonstration. Now, the only way you can learn something from a demonstration, if you're almost as good as the guy who's demonstrating, then you might pick up something. But if you should be good, you're not going to learn a damn thing. I think this is a demonstration. Nobody learned a damn thing. I did the underpainting one night, painted the thing the next day. Nobody learned a damn thing. Demonstration. You don't know what the guys think. Here, give you a simple example. It's funny, but it's true. Very simple example. Very simple example. Do it. Do it. Go ahead. Do it. The only time that you learn something from that demonstration, if you can play, to some extent. And the same thing when you watch a painter paint. If you're almost as good as he is, you may learn something. Otherwise, all these demonstrations are nothing but shows. The performance, a show. You have to be taught. You have to be told certain things. You have to be told the facts of life before you can paint. You have to be taught the facts of life. You have to be told what edge work is, what getting the action is, what anatomy is, color, all these things have to be taught. You have to be told, and then you're free to do what you want. But you have to learn to do first. You have to learn how to hold the damn bow before you can play. Say, here, do it. Express yourself. Here, be yourself.
I did. I studied violin.
All right. Well, you did. You did it. You did it.
My mother, they believe in that, you know.
You studied it.
I even played in the, when they selected, the 15 of them, they selected me to.
Beautiful. But you studied.
Oh, sure.
See, if I give a person who's never had a violin, that they can't do anything. Yeah. So, you have to be taught. Brain surgery, self-taught. Here, express yourself. All right, now, I would like some questions. I can go as deep as you want, I can stay as long as you want. Ask questions, please. Because you can't cover the universe in a short time. You can't cover it, but you can visit me, you can call me up, and I'll discuss it with you anytime, whatever you want. Now, any questions?
Could you please do that with the hand? Do a swing arm with a hand.
A what?
A hand.
A hand.
Yes, please.
All right. Well, you see now there, you see, there, it's very interesting. And sometimes I'm asked, a student will come to me, how do you paint an eye that's warm, liquid, and moist? How do you paint an eye like that? I keep quiet. I said, it takes a little thought. I hate to say it takes 10 years to do. The same thing with drawing the hand. I had trouble drawing hands. You know, did you ever hear of initiative? Well, anybody? Well, what does initiative mean? Initiative. What does it mean? Definition of initiative. One at a time. Raise your hand, one at a time.
Determination.
Determination, initiative.
Go ahead.
Get up.
Start, ambition, and dedication.
Go ahead.
You want to know what it means? That's not my definition, it's the right definition. Initiative, doing the right thing without being told.
That takes knowledge.
Doing the right thing without being told, that's initiative. I had trouble drawing hands. You know what I did? I went to the store, I bought the cast of a hand, and put it like this, 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 like that, with different lights. And I practiced drawing that hand. That's initiative, doing the right thing without being told. I didn't have to wait for somebody to tell me that. That's laboring over the obvious. Laboring over the obvious. You have trouble drawing noses, get a cast of a nose. Put it in different positions. And here, the same thing. After drawing from a cast, and that's the thing too. And there are no lines, you have to find your own lines. You have to be creative on that. I wish I could give you the lines over there. I can give you the lines over here to some extent. But think of the hand as a mass. Forget the fingers. Look at the mass of the hand first, the outside shape, and then the fingers fall in. The whole is greater than the parts. But it takes practice to do that. It takes a lot of practice. How do you paint an eye that's wet, moist, luminous? You have to be a master to do that. Now remember, all painting and drawing is psychological. You're giving an illusion. An illusion. And I tell my students, give the illusion, discover new ways so I can learn from you. I can learn from you. Maybe you can discover little tricks in calligraphy, but there is a body of knowledge. And Riley, he had it. God damn it, he had it. And very few art teachers do have it. They also express yourself, do the thing, but they don't give you the information. People are painting landscapes. You go out, you paint a landscape, you come in and it looks dark, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look like sunlight. But if you know that grass in sunlight is yellow-green, the 8th value, then you got it. It could take you 20 years by yourself to discover that. Riley told you in 2 minutes. I had a friend of mine who, after 5 years of research, unyielding research, he came over to me and said, you know, he said, I finally found how to paint grass in sunlight. And he showed it to me. He was right. It took him 5 years. I could have told him in 2 minutes. Saved him 5 years. And drawing a portrait, the shadow on a medium complected person, the shadow is the 3rd value. And the light is 876. It's a good way to start. You can't go wrong. On a black person, it's a little different. On a very light person, it's a little different. These are not formulas. They're rules of what happens in life, in reality. And a teacher, his job is to give information. I don't like teachers. The trick is to get rid of the teacher as soon as possible. The job of the teacher is to enable you to get along without him. That's the job of the teacher. Not to paint like him. I'm not going to mention names. There are different guys who give demonstrations all over the city. And you see their students, They use the same palette that the teacher uses, and they copy everything that he does, and they look like a second-hand, lousy reproduction of the teacher. My students, I make my students paint with the palette knife, without brush. Do a whole portrait with the palette knife. Then I teach them how to glaze, how to do an underpainting, how to paint alla prima, too. I teach all these things, so you have a choice. If you paint the way your teacher does, well, and I can tell who studies with whom. I can tell who studies with whom by looking at the different pictures. Inevitably, I can tell who the teacher was. And some of these guys go, this guy for color, this guy for this. Look, in painting and drawing, all you need to know is drawing, values, and edges. And you can teach yourself color. I don't care how much color you know. If the value is wrong, the color ain't going to look right. If you don't know your values, forget color. A color is an embellishment over something which is already beautiful. If the drawing is beautiful, if the values are beautiful, the color is an enhancement, an embellishment, just like the perfume to a rose or the dessert to a meal. If the meal is lousy, I don't care how good the dessert is, the whole damn thing is out of whack. That's the importance of color. And sometimes you don't want color all the time. Sometimes you want different moods. You want subdued color. No, everything should be color. Everything should be complementary. Great. You see greens over here, and you see different kinds of skin. That's avant-garde. That's expressionism. There's nothing wrong with expressionism. You can paint the sun red. I mean, the sky red. But if you know that the sky is the 8th value on top, and towards the horizon, it's the 9th value, it's a hell of a lot easier to go out and paint a landscape if you have that information. Why does it get warmer? A sunset. What makes a sunset? The dust. The more dust, the more beautiful the sunset. A red sweater at this distance, as you go away, isn't red anymore because the atmosphere dilutes the color. It grays the color, dilutes the color. And a black suit, a black away doesn't look black anymore. And a red suit doesn't look red anymore because the color dilutes it. You have to know, God bless you. You have to know this. This is information. You have to tell this to the student. So when he goes outside, he's not confused. He says, yes. Listen, let me start you. 8th value towards the horizon, the 9th value, 10th value, so forth like that. The grass in sunlight, yellow, green, 8th value. This is a guide. Then he can elaborate, extend, and change it if he wants to. But unless you have this information, you forget it. And that's the trouble with most of the teaching. That's why Raleigh was so great. He gave information. He made clear what people make obscure, so you got to feel this, you got to feel. Feel what? This color scale that I gave you from 10, this color scale is important. Why? Because if I come to your canvas, I say, honey, darker, honey, lighter, what the hell do I mean by that? But if I say, honey, the 5th value, I'm giving you something tangible. Say, honey, the 8th value, honey, the 9th value, 3.5. I'm being specific, not dark. How much? Same thing with color. How do you grade color? You can grade colors 100 different ways. They say you grade the color wrong, you're complimentary. Wrong. You can grade a million ways. I can show you a million ways to grade a color. Sometimes you grade with the complementary, sometimes you don't. It all depends. You'll do a magnificent painting tonight. And you say, I've learned it all. Now I know the secret. Master. You go home, you show it to your friends. They say, it's magnificent. They said, you have arrived. Then, next week, you paint, and it's lousy. Why? Why? There's a reason, a very definite reason. I'll tell you what the reason is. Because each painting has rules of its own. It's an individual experience, each painting. You may use rule 1, 2, and 3 for this painting, and tomorrow discard rule 1, 2, and 3 and use rule 5 and 6. The painting, the subject dictates what you're going to do. You can't use the same method for the next week's painting. You have to think. And that's the trouble starts when you start to think. Rather is to say, if something goes wrong with the painting, your thinking has gone wrong. Your thinking has gone completely wrong. That's why the painting is up, and he's right. You see people painting on the canvas. I tell them, step out and look at a distance. If you paint by the canvas like this, your mistakes start to look good. Then you step out, oh my God. That's what Sargent used to do, used to paint and step away, paint and step away, paint and step away. Because he saw the total vision. Here you see the detail, you see the body part. Yes?
Cesare, can you draw a few figures working from the large masses and then adding on the shapes?
All right, now. We went over here. He explained how, another principle, overlapping. This comes out of that, this comes out of that. Watch. This line comes ahead of that line. This line comes ahead of this line. This line comes ahead of that line. And this line and this line comes ahead of that line. And you get a feeling of solidity without shading because of overlapping. Otherwise you would get this. Instead of that. Is that principle used? You see outline all over the place. That principle used now. Michelangelo used it. Rubens used it. Raphael used it. You don't see it. And here you see. And that can be used in painting. And if you get this right, you get the shoulders for nothing and you can put a Susan guy. This is knowledge, observation. See? And your observation is important. Look, Paul used to say, your skill is as good as mine. It's up here. That's the difference. You all have skill. How many of you are professional artists? How many paint for fun? Okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but you should learn to work professionally, to reach a standard of excellence. And if you love to paint and you love to draw and you don't practice it, you're living in sin. And later on, you'll be the recipient of inconceivable agonies. You'll suffer because you're frustrated and you're unhappy. And you don't like your husband, you don't like your kids. And it stems from the fact that you're a frustrated individual. A skillful person is rarely unhappy. Rarely. Want to ask a question?
What makes professional a professional? How do you define that?
Professional. A person who's able to earn his living. Look, I teach in White Plains. There's one motto in my school where I teach. When you come here, you have to be able to earn a living out of your painting. If not, You have failed, and I have failed. If you can earn a living out of the painting, I have failed, and you have failed. The competition is so mediocre outside that it isn't funny. The kind of painter we see outside. Any questions?
Figures sitting in armchairs. How would you find the action on that?
A person sitting in an armchair? Yeah. All right. Now, for instance,
Face on.
Danielle, come over here and sit in that chair. Or maybe stand over here too first. Give us a standing pose. All right. Now put the weight on one leg. Yeah. Yeah. Put your weight on one leg. All right. Now. Now. Can somebody come out here and show me the line of action? The imaginary line of action in that figure? Would you say, look, that's the line of action. That goes down first in the drawing. And then the other lines are in sympathy with that premise. And then you fill the anatomy and so forth like that. All right, now let me bring that chair out here.
Yep.
All right. Where is the action? The action here is straight. And it stops right over here on the chair. And then it resumes again. The action is straight. Now twist in the chair. Yeah. Now the action, watch. That's the action. And that's the first line you draw when you paint. And if you're painting, you take the brush and you put that down as the action. That comes first. To hell with the anatomy, anything else. Then your values. See, look. Look at the action of the sun. Hold it, baby. Watch. Look at the action of the sun. You don't draw the anatomy, you draw the action first. The action of the sun, watch. You draw a line depicting that action. It's going like this. That's what you draw. And then you hang your anatomy on that. This is hard, it's not easy. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. Okay, thank you. All right.
Do you have any ideas on foreshortening?
Yeah. Yeah. Overlap, number one.
Draw standing on this side.
Yeah. Number one, overlap. Two, draw a mannequin. Try to think of it as a solid mean. If a leg is coming out over here, it gets bigger. Look, it comes out. As it gets closer. Try to think of the figure as round as a mannequin. But no matter whatever you do, you know, Bridgman was very strong on this. But, look, that still holds. That still holds. That line of action still holds. No matter what you do.
You work with cylinders, you do the legs and all.
Yeah, you put the line of action and you put the cylinders on top. There are 100 ways of drawing. I'm not saying that right is the only way, but it makes sense. The whole is greater than the part, otherwise you're premature. You're premature. It reminds me of an analogy. The pot is on the fire, and it's boiling. The pot, the water is boiling, the pot is on the fire. And you're cutting the beets. And the rabbit is still out of the bush. That's been premature. The pot is boiling, the rabbit is still out of the bush. Premature. By putting the anatomy. This comes first. If your people are interested, come over to White Plains. I'll give you a free session and explain this in detail. I'll sit with you and explain it in detail. It won't cost you anything. I'll show you firsthand, and there'll be a model posing, and I'll draw from the model. Then you draw from the model, and I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. Then you go home and practice.
Lessons on a Saturday?
There are classes on Saturday and Sunday there too. Morning, noon, and night. In White Plains.
Where's that?
Where's White Plains? It took me 2 hours to get here. No, it's about, I would say, if you're at Grand Central, it's half an hour from Grand Central on the train. You come there, I'll give you a free lesson or a couple of free lessons and explain this because I want to promulgate this type of thinking. I'm interested in promulgating this type of thinking.
Well, what about getting the correct proportions? I always read that the body is
Yes,
7 heads.
that comes much later. I want you to come with a free-flowing line. And I don't care if you goof. I want you to goof with authority. But I don't want to see a constipated line. I want to see a line that flows. I want you to goof with authority. And you will goof. But later on, I will teach you the proportions. What?
What's the name of the place, the address?
The Riley League of Artists, it's called. I've got cards over if you want them. It's half hour from Grand Central. All right. I'll give you my personal attention. You come there, I'll give you my personal attention. What?
Telephone.
914, area code. 761-6124. 914-761-6124. And I'll give you a couple of sessions free, completely free. He'll tell you. Are there any questions?
Could you, from that large first man, finish up these figures? These figures, starting with a large mass, the action, adding on. I'd like it to do a figure from the beginning large masses and then add on the muscle shapes and add on the details less. Oh yeah, if you can just stand a little to the right side.
Yeah, now here's your line of action. All right, now that's the a standing figure with the lines of action. Now, next comes the rib cage. Watch.
Stand a little to the right.
All right, I'll get over here.
No, because they can't get you on the video.
That's all right.
That's the rib cage. Then the torso.
Now, the rib cage and the torso overlap with
Right.
the waist or where?
Yeah, right here, at the waist. Now, this is schematic. It's not anatomy. See? Now, let me go further. Let's take a skeleton. There's a head. This is the spine. This is the rib cage, collarbone, and pelvis. Now, what Raleigh did, now, the rib cage stops here, the pelvis stops there. Now, what Raleigh did, he did this. He simplified it. And instead of doing these curly cues, he went like this. And that gave you the torso. That's schematic. It's not anatomy. Now, watch very carefully, and this can get very complicated. Side plane. Side plane. Top plane. Front plane. Under plane. Now, it does get complicated. Now, if you're doing an arm, so let's say you're doing part of a leg. This is the thigh. If you put an imaginary string around the thigh, you'll get planes. Put an imaginary string around the figure. Side plane, front plane, side plane. Now, the head. Okay. Planes can go all the way down. And planes interrelate. Now, this is not going to be convincing. It's not going to be it's a little complex unless I sit down with you. And that's why I offer you a free demonstration. If you come where I can sit with you, take the pencil, have the model in front of me, and show you how I develop. There's a philosophy. There's a procedure where the whole comes first, the action comes first, and then the detail. And when you put the highlight, that's just when you're about to collect your check, then you put the highlight. See? Believe me, it's the best way to paint. I never had trouble getting a likeness. I have no trouble getting a likeness doing a painting. Because of a procedure, a methodology, which is scientific. It's not, I hope to God it comes out. The same with the palette. You're mixing paint. The next day, geez, I can't duplicate that paint. What went wrong? Gee, I can't duplicate the paint. Because you don't have a methodology. This is predictable, and you don't hope to God, you know it's going to come out. There's times when I take the film and play a notice, I know it's going to come out. I don't hope to God it's not going to come out. That's science. And if it isn't predictable, it's frustrating. The portrait is due tomorrow. The next day, geez, I can't believe the night. Something went wrong with the mouth. Geez, what's wrong? When I do a portrait, the person comes to me, and I'll tell them this in advance. I'm the doctor, you're not. And after the portrait is finished, you tell me what you think is wrong with it. And if I judge that it's germane and artistically plausible, I will change it. But otherwise, I won't. And that's what Sargent did once. John Sicker Sargent. The woman's husband came over and said, look, I don't like the mouth, it's got to be changed. He said, nothing you do will make me change it. The guy kept quiet. People don't know what they're talking about. You do a portrait, the mother-in-law comes in, the mother-in-law, the sister, the guy. There's something wrong, the face doesn't look right, doesn't look. What the hell do they know? And you tell them. And you tell them off. You say, I'm the doctor. And I don't think it's germane. Your observation is incorrect. Period. That's what I tell them. I tell them in advance. You know, 5 people come over and give you a criticism. 5 people who know nothing. The grandmother comes in, this, he doesn't look youthful, he doesn't look, there's something is wrong. The eye is wrong. This. When I do a portrait, I talk to the person, and the person moves all over the place. And I make a composite. Otherwise you get a mugshot. The person gets tired, and the lips start to droop, and his head starts to get sort of. So I talk to him, I get him excited, he gets angry. He talks back, and I make a composite of what I see. That's how I do a portrait. And the person can move like this, like that, and I remember what I see, and I put it down because I have knowledge. I understand my planes, I understand I have knowledge. Work from knowledge. If you follow this system, you can work from knowledge. You can look at a model and know what's going on. You can take a photograph and know how to make it look artistic without changing. I mean, by interpreting. You know, there are accents. Now, for instance, look. Let's say, I am going home. Now, what's the difference? If I raise an inflection, I am going home. But if I say, I am going home, it's different, right? Or if I say, I am going home, it's different. If I say, I am going home, that's different. Or if I say, I am going home. So the accent, and you have to use accents in your painting. You can take the same damn photograph and make it look very artistic. Here's another example.
Excuse me, just before you leave it, you do like the arm or the leg kind.
Yes.
Sometimes the arm goes into around the head, the breasts go around the shoulder. You know.
Yes, all right. All right, how about this gets complicated. I'm doing it because Dan wants it, but it gets complicated. Watch. Look. The relationships. Watch. All these are relationships. And you get a subdivision of planes. I don't want to go into it because it's too complex. All right, but I'm going to show you something. All right. All right. Now here's the way most pictures are. They're redundant. It has no subject and predicate. Everybody is present. But as soon as I do this, I have a subject. Then I could have a predicate. One, two, three. Now, when you do a painting, and this is an overall tip, you have to have at least 3 values in doing a painting. If you have 1 value, it's redundant. 1 value is redundant. I can talk like that, you know, and put you to sleep, you know, after a while, blah, 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 blah. So 1 value is not enough. 2 values is a little better. But 3 values, you know, it will give you a punch in a painting. For instance, like, even in speech, to be or not to be, that is the question. You see, variety. And even a line is to be varied. Your composition is to be varied. You should have 3 values 3 different chromas, 3 different colors to get an effect. You know, I can't play soft all the time. There are times when you're... We have to go soft and loud, no?
And you play good, too.
All right. So you need, there are many analogies between music and painting. Now, I'm speaking of technique, but I'm not discounting the emotional element. See? Technique without emotion is dead. Have you heard somebody play the piano? He plays every note damn right, but it doesn't grab. You look at a painting, it's accurate, but it doesn't grab. So feeling comes in. But you have to have at least a reasonably good technique. A reasonably good technique. Then the feeling will come out by itself. See? So a painting has to be felt first, and then analyzed. But if you say, well, that's interesting, forget it. You should look at a painting, and then analyze. Now this comes into the question of aesthetics, which is a long subject on which I can talk for hours on, aesthetics, the different nuances of aesthetics. Look, there are all kinds of realism. You've got straight from the shoulder realism, romantic realism, poetic realism, abstract realism. You've got all kinds of realism. And as an individual, whatever your credo is, it can come out. But you have to have a body of knowledge first. And that's what Raleigh did. He gave you this body of knowledge so that you are able to find your way in the dark and not just goof, trial and error. You have to know what you're doing to some extent. And that's why I tell my students, draw the line of action, get the action lines. I don't care how distorted they are. I want you to have a free flow. Then I'll narrow you down. I can make you very accurate. I can give you an exact time. Raleigh used to call me Eagle Eye because I could tell a fraction off. I could tell. When the likeness was a fraction of a millimeter off, I could tell. Case of training. I don't believe in talent. I believe in motivation, desire. If you want it, you'll do it. A student came to me, he said, all I want to do is paint and draw. I said, well, why don't you do it? So he said, well, what if I don't make it? So I said, kill yourself. You don't ask that question. If you want to paint, you paint. You don't worry about whether you're going to make it or not. If you want to be an engineer, you become an engineer. If you want to be a lawyer, you become a lawyer. You don't ask if I'm going to make it or not. And there's that old Jewish saying. A Jewish friend of mine told me, he said, defecate or get off your goddamn pot. Defecate or get off the pot. You do it. So I still hold that offer. If you can ask as many questions as you want. I still hold that offer. You can come up to the studio over there, see me. I will personally sit with you, guaranteed. Promise. I will sit with you, guide your hand, and explain. Now, here's some drawings of it. You can look at them, and you can look at them, and I'll explain them to you if you want me to. Just, I'll put these drawings over here.